Check. Am I good back there? It is now 6 o'clock. It's time to call the council meeting to order. We will start with the invocation and the pledge, and I've asked Mr. Keith Morrison to lead us in the invocation, and I'll lead us in the pledge. If you all wouldn't mind standing, please. Ms. Flatt, we're ready for you to call the roll.
Honorable Mayor Fowler.
Present.
Honorable Councilman Bilbrey.
Present.
Honorable Councilman Graves. Honorable Councilwoman Hawkins.
Present.
Honorable Vice Mayor Hill.
Present.
I would ask you now to please look at the agenda as well as the minutes that we have been furnished, and let me know if there are any revisions or corrections or additions that need to be made. I will now consider a motion for approval of the agenda.
Make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Flatt?
Mayor Fowler.
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey.
Yes.
Honorable Graves.
Yes.
Honorable Hawkins.
To look at,
Vice Mayor Hill.
Yes.
I'll consider a motion for approval of the minutes of the council meeting held on February the 14th.
Make the motion.
Second.
Ms. Flatt?
Mayor Fowler.
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey.
Yes.
Honorable Graves.
Yes.
Honorable Hawkins.
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Under new business, if you will look at item number 3, please. It says to consider approval to suspend the reading of ordinances 697-23 and 698-23. We are going to be looking at those in more detail, and this just saves the council a little bit of time rather than read these entire ordinances and then have to go and read them again in just a few minutes. So I would consider a motion to approve the suspension of those two, the reading of those two ordinances at this time.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Flatt?
Mayor Fowler.
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey.
Yes.
Honorable Graves.
Yes.
Honorable Hawkins.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hill.
Yes.
Item number 4. This regards ordinance number 697-23. This is to consider approval of second and final reading, which amends the fiscal year's 22-23 budget, which was passed by ordinance 684-22. It did pass on first reading at our last meeting, and so it does require a public hearing, and so I will now suspend the council meeting, and we will move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. This is basically this is our ARP funds that we have received that would be for we have chosen to use that for the Big Mac Drive construction, and basically it is a money in, a money out situation. So it is a net of zero. So this is money that we've been appropriated by the government, and that this is what we have chosen to spend those funds on. And again, it's just a net of zero. Any thing about that? All right. If anybody has any questions or any comments about that part or this ordinance, hearing none, I'll close the hearing section, and I will for second and final reading of this ordinance. I'll make the motion that we go ahead and on second reading that we approve ordinance 697-23, which amends the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Do I have a second? Okay. Ms. Flatt?
Mayor Fowler,
Yes.
Honorable Bilbray,
Yes.
Honorable Graves,
Yes.
Honorable Hawkins, Mayor Hill.
Yes.
Item number 5 is to consider approval on first reading of ordinance 698-23, changing zoning from an R1 low-density residential to an R3 high-density residential. And it's says it's brought to us by Mr. Morrison. So I'm just going to ask him to tell us a little bit about that.
This is a property owner request at Virginia Street. This has went through the Planning Commission. They gave it a positive recommendation. This is a request to rezone to R3 with the intent of building a duplex on the property. There's currently a house and a garage on the property. Mr. Hammock is here, who represents the request to have it rezoned. So if you have any questions, is there anything else? I sent what R3 zone allows today, what the setbacks are, zoning map showing you where the additional R3s were. Closest one is Phillips Bend over off of First Avenue. And I think I sent everything that you all had requested. There was also additionally multiple property owners around that were against it, as well as letters. And I believe there are property owners here that are for it as well. So.
Okay, this would be on first reading, and it would take a second reading and a public hearing for it to become a certified ordinance. But if we do have some discussion here on the council, and I think we've got some here in the chamber as well. So does anybody have anything they'd like to say or speak to this issue?
Say that one more time. The closest R3 is where?
Phillips Bend off of First Avenue.
So how are some duplexes in there? I walk this neighborhood.
Were put
Explain
in
that.
before the zoning changes several years ago. Council chose to change zoning so that to get a duplex, you now have to have R3 or an RD property zone. Most of the properties in Allgood are R1, R2. There are very few R3s. Most of R3s already have things on them. So to get a duplex now, you have to be R3.
I guess I still have a problem seeing a duplex fitting that piece of property. Bob, do you have any comments on that, on setbacks and whether it actually?
It's big enough. Oh.
You said someone's here representing that in the audience? Would you mind telling us again what you plan to do there? Yeah. I'm hard of hearing, so get close to the mic.
I've got some examples too. Can I give them? Can I bring them to you?
Pass them out.
So while they're looking that over, your intent is to tear the house down that's currently there on the corner?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and there's a little garage there too.
The garage is right on the property line.
Right on the
It's
property line.
across any seven. We would clean all that up. The house now, we have the square footage of property to do this, and I can do it with a 1-story or 2-story. Both the examples I gave you are 2-story buildings. We could do it with a 1-story. I just thought those really looked good. Good curb appeal.
Are you the property owners? I mean, is that,
Yes, sir.
you know, I guess right now, in my mind, the only thing the council can do is change the zoning.
Mm-hmm.
We go from an R1 to an R3.
Correct.
And once we do that, we don't have any control over anything.
Would still have to be a duplex, is that right? I mean, I couldn't build anything bigger than a duplex.
I think that opens the door wide open to, and that's what I'm trying to get at is, are you going to build a duplex, or are you going to sell it to somebody else, or is somebody else going to build a sky-high apartment building, or what's going on? I mean, that's it. Right now, if we approve do the rezoning, it opens the door to a whole list of things that can be put in R3.
On that
And we
one
have no
lot,
control over that as a council.
and that would be on that one lot is all you're approving the zoning on, right?
Yeah, it'd be just for the location you've asked. So permitted principal uses and structures for an R3 zone are single-family detached dwellings, including site built, new factory manufactured, multi-section residential home, duplex or two-family dwellings, apartments, leasing of rooms, not over 50% of the total floor space, customary accessory uses and structures, and short-term rental properties, subject to Section 28 of the zoning code.
It's
Oh.
not been that long since we voted to change it. Not be a change.
He would still be bound to the setbacks, so he ain't gonna be able to go out there and build a monstrosity. He's still gonna have to observe those setbacks.
Right. So the square
Right.
footage would limit how many units he could have.
But I think to Mr. Graves's point, what we're trying to say is if we change the zoning to an R3, any of those items that Mr. Morrison read off could go in an R3 zone. So if we change the zoning to R3, I know what your intent is, but that may change. And then you could be renting rooms, or you could build apartments, or there could be short-term rentals. I was just jotting this down as he was reading them off. So when you open up that, I'm sure it's not, we just have to be careful because if it turned out to be something different, as long as we've zoned it R3, we have to live with whatever can go in an R3 zone. And those are some of the things that can go there besides your proposed duplexes.
But I could rent the house I got right now, correct?
No, you can still rent the house. I mean,
Yeah.
as far as
Oh,
renting
okay.
the current
Totally
structure
tore
that's
down.
there, I mean, you could.
Yeah, I can rent that. Wouldn't be a good renter probably. The house is in pretty bad shape, but I'm just looking. This would create. Right now, the property is valued at $37,000. This is going to be a lot more property tax for the city of Allgood. You got new businesses coming into town. You got a pizza place. You got a coffee shop there in downtown. You know, I just figure this is going to benefit all that. Utilize the property. The house, you know, the lot's big enough to do this. Land's hard to come by. You know, why waste the land? It's going to be a lot nicer looking building than what's there now.
I guess I'd be one of the first to admit that since there's a duplex on sort of either side, both sides of it,
Correct.
another one would probably complement that corner. But I don't think something other than a duplex there would help. I think it would maybe go the wrong direction. So that's my basic concern is it going to be a duplex, or are you going to stay with a duplex, or you going to sell it to somebody else and somebody else want to build something three
Right.
stories high?
Andy, do you know what the square footage of the lot is?
It's 11,635, I think.
So first two units for an R3 require 9,000 square feet. Anything over 2 requires an additional 3,000 square foot per unit. So to get 3 units, he'd have to have 12,000 square feet. So if he's only got 11, the square footage would limit to two units.
So it sounds like right there would limit me to a duplex. I couldn't do any more than a duplex because I don't have the square footage.
Without a question.
This is less of a question than a comment, just to point out. I mean, does this open the door for other properties? You know, all the other neighbors that bought single-family dwelling, single R1 homes in here. You know, is this opening up for the door for subsequent, you know, the people down the street, the next house, and is this just inviting this issue to perpetuate?
We usually take comments or questions at the end of the meeting, but I know there are several people here who are interested in this particular item. So if they would like to be heard, I'd like to give them an opportunity, Mr. Hammock. Okay, if you want to have a seat, or you want your examples back. Okay, there's two I have. Is there anybody here that would like to speak to this issue? So glad to see you, Miss Wilma. This is Miss Wilma Brown, and she lives over on 2nd Avenue.
And unfortunately, I live in a duplex, and boy, I'm getting a bad feeling in here. I'm getting a little tight. Makes me nervous thinking that those are such bad things to have. I've got a duplex on corners all around me, and you know, maybe that all happened earlier before, because my dad did build some of them, and I think they look pretty good. I know I keep mine good, but I will tell you this, the house that's on the corner is not good. And there's been building going around me, all around me, for the last 6 weeks. And I didn't know you had to come and get permits or do this stuff to build things on your property. I don't know about this stuff. I just thought if you own property, it was your property. But I will tell you this, that house is not fit to live in. My grandson lived there last, and it's not fit to live in. The garage is another mess. And the people, some of the people that are here were interested in buying that house, actually made an offer on it. So what I don't understand is my house backs up to this. The garage sits on the back of my property. Now, I don't like it, but you know what? It's not mine to say whether I like it or not. That belongs to somebody else. And I'll tell you something else. They'll get rid of that garage. I'll give them whatever's 5 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet off of my property if it'll help them. Now, that's how bad I like what's there. Now, there's nobody bad that's going to live there. Now, I will tell you, 3 houses down from me, it's a single residential property, but I'll tell you 3 families live there. So there. I'll also tell you that just around the corner down there, there's a mobile home parked under a canopy. There's been people in and out of it constantly. Now, you know, rules are good, but let's use them for everybody. That's all I'm asking you to do. Be fair about this. Don't make people like me, just because I can't afford a big fine house. Don't put me in a category that I can't live like a decent person. Can't have just one person living in my house. She has 1 car. And we don't bother anybody. We don't bother anybody. We don't say anything to anybody. And I can assure you that these people that are going to build this duplex on here, one of them they already have. A lady that's already asked for one of them, and she is an older RN nurse at the hospital who lives alone. The lady and I that live in my duplex that I live in are single women. You know, we're not people that have parties. We're not people that have 5 cars. I wish I had 5 cars to park in my driveway. I'd love that. I'd sell some of them, make me some money, but I don't have that. I live very sparingly on Social Security. And I'm going to tell you, if we can better this little town and make it look better and not have junk houses sitting around, I think we'll be a whole lot better off. Now, there's my point.
Thank you, Miss Wilma. And we're not down in duplexes. Please, I don't want anybody to leave thinking that. We are just concerned with what else could go in if we zone this R3. That, I think that's the majority of what our sticking point has been. But it's not that we don't think what would be there wouldn't be an improvement. That's, you know, for sure. Does anybody else want to speak to the issue while we're still on here?
Howdy, folks. My name is Brent Herron. I live on Virginia Street, and I have property on 2nd Avenue as well. So I'm kind of I've got a little interest on both streets of this. I don't know if Keith was able to get you my letter in time, but I hope you're able to read it. If you hadn't, I hope you can still read it, this evening. you know, I feel like we're right back around where we were a few years ago with this particular property. The gentleman that had it before, you know, I think my impression was they were trying to kind of prep to set this up as a duplex in the future. And he assured us no, it wasn't going to happen, that the grandson was going to live there. And you know, I like the gentleman that lived there before. No offense to any of that family, but you know, it was assured to us back then that no, that was just to fix it up. No, you know, we're not going to do anything with this, sell this to make it a duplex or nothing. So I feel like we're just kind of circling back around on this property. And then there was like I mentioned in my note, a property just a few houses down from that, 135 Virginia Street. We were visiting the same kind of situation just a couple of years ago, and Keith, help me remember, that was squashed too for the same kind of reason. This was zoned for R1, and you know, I feel rules are rules. You know, this is the bomb, no matter what they are. You know, you don't have to like what. Enforce the rules. You know, Mr. Amick, I appreciate him wanting to better the neighborhood, but it doesn't have to be with a duplex. You know, he could tear the house down and put another nice little house right back there. You know, I live in a small house on a small property. It's possible, you know, you don't have to have a duplex to go right back just because there's duplexes there, and nothing to duplexes or, you know, necessarily like that. It's just, you know, these are the rules, and Mr. Graves, like you mentioned, once you open this Pandora's box, you know, somebody next street over is going to say, hey, you did it for this property. I want to rezone it too. You know, I want to rezone to an R3 and make it a duplex. And well, maybe they don't have the best intentions like this gentleman does, and they come in and they do something that's not a nice duplex. You just open, and we have these rules. We have these zones for a reason. The council studied it. He studied it for years. I mean, that's there for a reason. What's the point in having this if we're not going to adhere to it? And just for a developer to come in and try to spot rezone, that's a dangerous precedent. You know, you rezone. What if you rezone that? You know, Trinity's maybe decides to sell out someday, and somebody comes in and rezones that. You know, you rezoned over there on 160 Virginia Street and made it a duplex. Why can't you make this property right here in front of City Hall something for tire recycling or something? I mean, it's just, the rules are the rules. You know, I'm all about improving the neighborhood. I do my best with my property, and you know, they can build a nice small house there or a large house there. You know, it doesn't have to be a duplex. Is all I'm asking. We've gone, Mr. Armour's gone, you know, we've had the traffic studies, the Virginia Street, I hold it up there. I don't know what the numbers are, but I think Virginia is one of the biggest raceways in town. It's 15 miles an hour, and we have more traffic and more speed on that street than we can handle. More duplexes, more traffic, you know, so forth and so on. Like I said, when you open that door, property right around the corner, say, well, that's, you know, they got it, well, let me have it. It just keeps going. You know, this is a 6 of it. I'm in a residential neighborhood. We want to keep the feel of it. I don't need a 2-story of anything like, you know, a duplex there, but right in the middle of this all this yellow, it just doesn't make sense. It's just you know, if we break these rules, you know, what's to keep us from breaking any of the other rules that all get sets out? So, with respect to the builder and anybody else that, you know, wants a duplex, I just ask that you please reconsider, because we want to keep all good, and keep the feel of the integrity of the subdivision neighborhood that we have, and just ask that you look out for the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. Is there anyone else in the group that would like to speak to this?
I ain't got a problem, but I don't want a duplex. If he wants to build him a house, that's fine. We keep the zoning like it is. Like the man said, if you let him do it, neighbor down the street's gonna wanna do it. That's not treating everybody right. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay. Any discussion amongst the council? We discussed it enough. All right then, moving on to item 5. Do we want to take some action on this evening? If it needs to be studied further, of course, you know, we're able to table it for further study, or I can consider a motion to approve or not approve. Again, this is just on first reading, so it would require a second reading for it to become final.
I guess from my standpoint, I'd like to see it maybe tabled, get a little more insight into it. That's just from me personally.
All right, Mr. Graves has made the motion that we table this. Is there a second to that motion? If not, the motion to table would fail for lack of a second.
To you guys around this property that are duplexes, as Ms. Brown talked about, and those are probably existing non-conforming uses in R1. And what might be better is to send this back to the Planning Commission to look at all of the properties in that area, including the ones that are duplexes, and consider whether or not to rezone all of those existing duplexes to R3 with this, so that those are no longer non-conforming uses. When you have an existing non-conforming use, they have the right to expand and change that use without regard to any of your zoning. So if you have an opportunity to clear up existing non-conforming uses and restrict those, then that is always a good opportunity to at least investigate and consider, and that might go with Councilman Graves' idea for further study. So you could send it back to the Planning Commission to look at the area as a whole as opposed to just this one lot. And then they can give you their recommendation and you guys can consider it at that point.
Okay, Mr. Hogan. Yes, sir.
I think the property that you're talking about over there, I was on the BZA board a few years ago, and I think we went through this on the BZA. At that time, I think I believe it was his grandson, was with the intent of remodeling that house to live in it. Bill, I think he was on that board too. And I think we approved it for the house to be remodeled. In return, we also denied a house at the corner of 3rd and Virginia. They wanted to put a duplex on that property, and we denied them there. So you might want to consider that too, because I don't have my paperwork, but I'm sure it's in the minutes. That I don't know how far back the minutes go, but I do remember that we denied that property there. I think it was Mr. I can't remember what the gentleman's name was, but it was right at the corner across from Ross Williams' house. They wanted to put a duplex on that, and we denied them that to set that duplex on that property. What I'm trying to get at, if we, I mean, and I know Mr. Hammock, and I know them all. I'm friends with all of them, but right is right and wrong is wrong. If we're going to do that, then we might as well open it up. I have some property over by where we live now. They put a trailer on there now on this property, and it was just supposed to be a house. But now there's a trailer, and they're boxing it in. So if we're going to do that, you're going to open it up for a trailer park, and you're not going to be able to do much about it. So you might want to think about that. I mean, Now I don't know, you'll have to look through the menu for them to remodel that house that they're talking about. It was to be remodeled. So, I mean, now we're talking about tearing down and building apartments. Duplexes, 2-story duplexes and stuff. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So that's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Yes, sir, Mr.
In my note, and like I was saying, I feel like it's Groundhog's Day and we're repeating ourselves. At some point, the citizens have to be able to live on their street without looking over their shoulder, seeing who's going to try to rezone right beside them. And, the rules are the rules. I don't want to have to keep, if I hadn't drove by and seen the sign, this all might have just got by me, because I don't pass that corner all the time. You know what? The citizens have to get to a point where you don't have to keep looking over your shoulder to see what's going to be rezoned after it's already been set. And like you said, it's that we've already voted on the one he mentioned, and we're right back around. They'll come back and try to it'll be another situation all over again. Open up the can of worms. So, but yeah, I would just like to be able to live there knowing for the rest of my time. I've got properties on the second too that I could make several duplexes probably, but I don't want to do that I don't want to do that to the neighborhood. If I ever build, I want to build just a small, single family house within the guidelines of the city. But I just want to be able to live and not have to look over my shoulder wondering who I've got to fight next to keep the neighborhood, and keep all good, all good.
Sorry. Well, I think I'm pretty familiar with that area because the house that you live in used to be Miss Ruby Cooper. And on the corner there, Virginia, my grandmother lived, and on 2nd Avenue, where Miss Wilma Brown, who spoke earlier, there was a single little house there, and my great-grandmother lived there. So I've ridden my bike up and down that street just every which way I say for several years. Now, there hadn't been any bicycle riding lately, I can tell you that. But, the council can... Okay, Mr. Lane.
It's still a R zone. Used to, we allowed a duplex in R1 exception. And I'm sure it should still be. Somehow we decided that we wanted more control of it, so we decided to put the R3 duplexes in the R3 zone, road frontage, setbacks. So I think that, and I understand if I lived over where it is R1, but we used to have a duplex. It was permitted in the R1 zone by special exceptions on zoning appeals. We changed it to R3. It's the only R3 we have.
No, we've got R3s in other areas. Cooper, the apartments, duplexes on Cooper.
I'm not sure we don't need to take another look at it. A duplex is certainly not an apartment complex. I'm not still do what we want to do by letting the zoning appeal or something like that handle that. We've got too many restrictions on it, and then we put it in the R3 zone, then we ain't got many restrictions as far as what can be built there. But it's still R1. Everybody's talking about changing, we're not changing the use, we're just changing the footage, what's allowed there. But the use is the same, it's still a residential use. It's not like we're letting commercial come into a residential neighborhood. We're not doing that.
But it's not single family.
Well, it's not single family, it's two family. Again, I think we need to think about is what's it gonna do to that community to get rid of that old house and that old garage? You know, that's gonna be a big plus in making that neighborhood look better. It's got to. That old house is pretty rough. Even if you go in there and try to remodel that house, it's never gonna be as good as the structure. We might could put some restrictions on how the duplex, or how it ought to look or whatnot, but again, if I lived over there and had that old house and could get rid of it, one duplex, that ain't the worst thing. I think we may need to look at taking the duplex out of the R3 zone. It's twixt in between right there. I'm kind of like Ron. It opens the door for too much stuff, and it's too restrictive. There is a market for some duplexes. This is a great town. People want to move up here. The market, every apartment in this town's rented. You can't rent it. You can't hardly get in this town. It's full. So these newer generations, they want apartments. I'm not that way. I'd rather have a house, but it is what it is.
Can I say something? Yes. I live on 117 Virginia Street. Me and my husband own it. We're a Kirby family. But I do know my next door neighbors were not allowed to build a duplex over there. I do believe it's one for all. You know, it should be what's right for one should be right for all. And everything, Andy Hammock knows my husband. My husband's in the building department and everything. And but in our shed, we're gonna redo our home as well. We live in Allgood. I'm originally from up north, very big town or states and everything, used to high city living and all that and everything, but this is all good and everything. It's a small town. That is what it's based on. It's not a big town. It is a small country town. And honestly, I would love for it to stay that way. And we've dealt with drug addicts on our road that live right across the street from me and everything. And Lord forbid, anything else that moves in there, what else will come in on our street and how much we had to put up with and everything. Just saying.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anything else? Okay.
Sound like Bob suggested going back to the planning commission was another look at the overall picture.
Well, that's to be decided at another time, but we can, if you want to, have a motion to send it back to the planning commission for more study and look at that area further and look at the zoning. We can do that. Thanks to Danny for the suggestion.
I will make that motion.
Okay. And is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion to send it back to the planning commission fails for lack of a second. Mr. Hammock, did you have something else that you wanted to say? Yes, sir.
I don't know your name, but I think you're onto something there. You know, there's a lot of duplexes on First Avenue, right down there by Phillips Bend. You might just pull all those in and do it all at once and take care of the problem for all of them.
They have to make a motion, and that's failed. So at this point, we need a motion to approve or a motion to deny, or we'll go on to the next item.
All right. Does any council member have a motion to approve this ordinance? Hearing none, it fails for lack of a motion. And we'll be moving on. Now, this does not mean that, Mr. Hammock, you cannot resubmit or whatever you need to do, but it does mean that it's over for tonight in any event that it's failed for lack of a motion. So we're moving on then to item number 6, which is consider approval to award the street paving bid. Now, we looked at these. We had several streets to consider and not much money to consider them with. So, Mr. Morrison, do you want to tell us what's in play?
So we're looking at $140,000 is what we've got allotted for paving that we can work with. We bid out Mill Street, Mirandy Road, Quinlan Lake, Mill and Pave, 4th Avenue, Mill and Pave. Those are both small sections that are marked out with white paint. We also added 3rd Avenue, Swift Street, Markwater, and Moore Street to see what all we could come up with. 3rd Avenue, the two bidders bid on different lengths of segments, so we automatically have to throw that out. Those are not equivalent bids. Looking at the Mill Street and Mirandy Road, Rogers Group was quite a bit higher on Mill Street, so I think after some discussion, the council decided to go with Copeland on Mill Street for $69,000. And to get into the $140,000 bid mark, we can do Quinlan Lake Mill and Pave at $18,000, 4th Avenue Mill and Pave at $37,000, and Moore Street at $16,000 with Copeland DRP, and that will bring us to $140,000 total paving. If you look at the same streets with Rogers Group, the total for those streets is $156,675. So Copeland DRP is the low bidder for the streets that I listed off.
Okay, one more time for the streets. We got Mill Street. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Then did we go to Quinlan Lake?
Yes.
Okay. And then 4th Avenue?
Yes. Now, both of those are mill and pave small sections, so they're marked on the pavement where they're at.
Okay. And then, for some reason, I have together Swift and Markwater, but...
Well, if we wanted to do those, both contractors asked that they be done together because they're close together.
Oh, okay.
So we dropped down and picked up Moore Street to get us in at the $140,000 limit.
Okay.
Just so I'm sure, the Mill and Pave is just it's not like true, full pavement. That's
go lane. And let me see if I brought the bid packet. Quinlan Lake Road is a single lane, 12-foot wide, 135-foot long. They'll mill it up, pave it back down, and it'll match the original pavement. 4th Avenue is a double lane, 21-foot wide, 372-foot long. They'll mill both lanes and repave it, and it'll match the rest of the pavement. So what this does is it fixes areas that are in need without having to repave the whole street. We did this the last time with Dry Valley Road at Signature Healthcare, and we did a small section of Quinlan Lake Road at the stop sign. That way we get more paving and we don't have as much to do.
So this is a dumb question. Why can't we mill and pave mill?
We can, but when you mill, it costs you extra money, so the whole road needs paving, so we're just going to mill it and just pave over the whole thing. Plus, we're going to try to get just a little bit extra width on the edges. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there are always more roads than there are, or there is money to pay for them. But we're trying to chip away at this, no pun intended, a little bit every year. And so I would go ahead and make a motion then that we approve the Copeland DRP bid for Mill Street, the Quinlan Lake Road, 4th Avenue, and the Moore Street proposal as it is set out. And I think that gets to the total of $140,000. Okay. So I have made that motion. Is there a second? Ms. Flatt?
Mayor Fowler,
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey,
Yes.
Graves,
Yes.
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 Item number 7 is to consider approval of an agreement with Wold AE in whatever amount we decide to choose there. They've given us, I think, 2 to pick from for tennis court design work. Now, what we were considering, I believe, is they had given us an agreement for $11,000 for the scholars, and this would drawing or of what we could do over at the tennis courts to redo the courts, to potentially make them pickleball as well as tennis, and put a bathroom over there. And have I left anything out? What they were going to do?
So the 3 options included for 11-2 were the renovation of the 2 existing courts with options on refurbishing the existing fencing versus replacement, a conceptual site plan, which is also called a rendering, of a new pickleball court, a perimeter walking trail, and a pavilion with a unisex restroom and a maintenance closet, and an opinion of probable cost to be used for implementation of the proposed improvements, which will include phasing options. All that would be included. I was asked last night if we could have them, as an additional option, include the dual use of the 2 existing courts as tennis court and pickleball as a part of the renovation, and not have the 3rd court dedicated to pickleball. They said that was an option. They also said if you didn't want the conceptual site plan, if you didn't want the rendering, and all you wanted was kind of a phasing and a breakdown and what the options and what the engineering would cost, that they could reduce the 11-2 by $2,600, and without the rendering, they could do all of those options for $8,600.
I certainly like that number better than 11-2.
It's a little bit more savings. So, but they did say they could give you all the options, the phasing, the costs, some kind of breakdowns of what you could do, and then what it would cost to engineer the restroom, the walking trail, and the additional court if you wanted that. So with rendering is 11-2. Without rendering, conceptual plan is 8,600.
What's your recommendation, Keith? Do you need it? Do you need the renderings to be able to do it? I think pickleball courts would be great. It's a huge sport. It seems like everybody except myself have picked up this sport. I think it'd be positive, but do you need it for construction? I like the savings better, but if you need it, you need it.
I don't think you necessarily need it as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I could come up with the numbers, but if you want the conceptual to share with the public and let them see what you're proposing to do with it, that would be the only thing I could see. It's going to give you a conceptual layout that you share with the public and say, these are the two options. Which one do you really like the look of better? So that's the only thing I would see. Without it, the decision's just going to get the same. You're going to have options. You're going to have pricings and give you kind of a budgeting number to go with.
And after having all that information, I'm sure if we decided to move ahead with the project, they could do a rendering at that time.
They could, if once you made a decision, this is what we want, then you could go back and ask them for a rendering if you wanted to.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we consider approval of an agreement with Wold AE in the amount of $8,600 for tennis court design work. And, of course, that's without the rendering at this point. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Flatt?
Mayor Fowler,
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey.
Yes.
Honorable Graves,
Yes.
Honorable Hawkins.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm sure he feels like he's given it already, but it's time for the city administrator's report.
The Quilt Festival will be March 31st and April the 1st. Those events will run from 9 to 4 each day. They'll be all over town. They'll be at the Hope Church here at City Hall with the Button Society and the model trains. The White Plains Historic Home will also be open with quilts on display and the history of the house available for viewing. On April the 1st, we will also be doing the annual All Good Easter Egg event. So we'll have 3 different age categories of Easter egg hunting for kids on the 3 ball fields with prize eggs for each age group. We will also have pictures with the Easter Bunny hosted by First National Bank. First Freedom Bank is also sponsoring it, as well as Sam's. And department heads, did y'all have anything? This concludes my report.
Do we have anything else that this is the time for our hearing from our citizens? If it hasn't been discussed already, do you have something that you'd like to come up to the mic and see or speak about? Okay, I would like to add one thing to our list of items for things that you might be interested in to attend. On March the 23rd, we're going to be having a little seminar presentation over at Hope Church. It begins at 10 o'clock a.m. That's in with the police department. It is for anyone who wishes to attend, and it will be at 10 o'clock over there, and I plan on being there because it's going to be about scams and fraud and how to look for and avoid same. And so I don't know anything else about which particular door at Hope yet. Do you, Chief? Okay. So just remember, mark that on your calendar. If you've got an hour to spend with us on March the 23rd over at Hope, I think that'd be great for all of our citizens. I'm certainly looking forward to it, as well as the Quilt Festival, and I'm sure you all know that is the one fundraising event that we have a year for the senior citizens. And so the more that we can support that activity, I think it behooves us to do that and take care of our seniors. And let's try to do that and come out to the White Plains House. If you want to display a quilt, make sure you go over there on March the 18th between 10 and 2, and they will receive your quilt and will tell you where that it will be placed. So there'll be flyers, there'll be places all over town, so where you can go and view the quilts. Usually the Methodist Church, and here at City Hall, and the White Plains House, over at the community center. I'm sure I'm leaving out something. Hope Church. So anyway, it's a great time, and hopefully we'll have good weather for it, and we'll have a lot of citizens come into town that who are visiting our town. And so, you know, what we want to do is show them that all good's all good, right? So without further ado, I would make a motion to adjourn, and let's see when our next meeting is. April 11th. So, unless anyone objects to adjourning, hearing none. Oh, Luke's ready. Seconded by Vice Mayor Hill. So, any vote no? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.